everybody, to the Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest podcast. I'm Drew, and we are going to talk about some sports today. Got a big show planned for you this week, as usual. I'm going to talk about the NFC and who are the best teams in it. I'm going to recap Week 5 in the NFL and talk about my love, not so much love, Seahawks of the week against that crazy game against the Falcons. So it's going to be a good episode today. Stick around for all of it, and we're going to have a great time. First, I'm going to talk about Week 5 in the NFL, starting with a crazy shootout that happened against the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. I have no idea, absolutely no idea whatsoever what happened to Carolina's defense. It was one of the best in the year last year. They had a lot of great talents, and I do not believe that the loss of Josh Norman is the cause of all of their defensive woes. One player does not make a defense. I mean, they've got arguably the best middle linebacker. I, of course, think Bobby Wagner's better in all of football in Luke Kuechly. And they've got a lot of good pieces around him. Thomas Davis, and I mean some good pass rushers up front there. Star Lotulelei, he's a beast. So I honestly don't know what they're doing. That game ended 41 or 43-38. It was a crazy game, a high scoring game. Ended in overtime with a kick by the Saints. But that was a crazy game, and Cam Newton walked out of his press conference, and everyone was talking about how, disrespectful and all that he is. And the Carolina Panthers have one heck of a Super Bowl hangover. They're certainly not going to be in my discussion for tops in the NFC with the 1-5 record that they put together this year. Another cool thing that happened in the NFL this week, big comeback for the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football, and that was really fun to watch. They're down 9 to 20, 23, 22, something like that, close to that. Not an exact science here on the Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest show, but it was a big comeback. They scored a touchdown, came back, scored another touchdown, and ended up forcing the game to overtime. They didn't get the ball first. Andrew Luck got the ball first and couldn't do anything with it. And then the Texans went down to score. And, it was a lot of fun to watch. It was within the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter was when they really started their comeback. They had 9 points going into that fourth quarter and up towards the very end of it when that comeback really started. A lot of the Texans fans had already left the building, and you could hear the empty cheer of the stadium. It just goes to show you that it's never over in the NFL. Brock Osweiler made some good throws. Generally, he played pretty poorly throughout that game, but he made some good throws there at the end to help his team win. I'm not 100% sure about whether or not that contract was an overpay for the Texans. I'm thinking that it was, but having a good quarterback in this league is just too hot of a commodity, having that franchise guy. We are so lucky as Seahawks fans to have Russell Wilson, our franchise guy. Even though he's expensive, I mean, you cannot overpay for these guys, these elite passers in the NFL. Now, I don't think Brock Osweiler is an elite passer, and it'll be interesting to see how his contract plays out throughout the course of it. But as of right now, if you have a guy that can win you the game, that is what you need. The next cool thing that happened in Week 5 in the NFL, the Patriots won again and are absolutely the AFC leaders. Tom Brady is not rusty at all. He's completely on fire. That's a tough team to beat in the AFC, especially with Ben Roethlisberger going down this week and the Steelers that seem to get beat by just random teams when they're playing them away. I mean, they lost to the Miami Dolphins. Now, I know Big Ben went down for most of that game, but still, the Dolphins do not have the level of talent that the Steelers do, so it was a pretty inexplicable loss that they had. But the Patriots, absolutely kings of the AFC right now. I don't really see much in terms of contenders against them as it goes. Maybe the Broncos, but it should be interesting to see it play out further. And really interesting when the Hawks go to Foxborough to play them. Maybe get a little bit of revenge. That's what I'll be hoping for. Last thing, Week 5 recap. Case Keenum had a career day. He was looking great. he was making all the throws. Now, this is a guy historically that is just absolute garbage. There's a reason why the Rams drafted Jared Goff number 1 overall. And it's not because Case Keenum is a franchise quarterback. He's not. But, he's been making some good throws and some good spots, throughout the season. And this game against the Lions was a great game for him. He threw 3 touchdown passes. He threw for over 300 yards. And he threw a pick at the end of the game to lose the game, which was more classic Case Keenum. But, that's a lot for him to do, especially because they, of course, couldn't get the run game going with Todd Gurley because they stacked 9 men in the box against him. So that could be part of what is making it a little bit easier for Case to get some completions, but he doesn't have much in the way of great receivers. So it was really, all in all, a good day for him. I don't expect that to continue. It was just a fun little tidbit from week 6 or week 5, whatever week we're in. Week 6. So that is all I have to say about that. So let's talk about the game that mattered. The game that us as Seahawk fans were biting our nails. I was screaming at my television. At one point screaming like a little child when Earl Thomas got an interception. But it was a lot of fun to watch. It was very stressful. And I'm going to get into my not so much love Seahawks of the week. Not so much love Seahawk of the week. Nolan Freeze, long snapper. My goodness, you have one job. A long snapper in the NFL takes a spot on the 53-man roster, and he has got one job. And his job is to long snap the football so that the holder can catch it, so the kicker can kick it. And it seems like a really simple mechanic, a really simple thing to do to snap the ball. I shouldn't know the long snapper's name. I mean, we had Clint Gresham before, and then we got rid of him for whatever reason. I don't know, business side of the NFL, whatever the heck ever. I don't know. I should not have to look up the name of the long snapper. If I look up the name of the long snapper, he did something wrong. He did something awful, and that was true this week. He skid a ball right up there to John Ryan, who couldn't put it down fast enough for a kick that could have cost us the game. Now, and this is not the first time that this has happened this year. Maybe if it was the first time that it happened, I might have a little bit more grace for the guy. But as of right now, if he would have cost us that game, I would be even more livid than I am now, Nolan Freeze. You better practice. You better snap that ball. Snap it good. You got one job. Do your job. Snap the ball. And for my love Seahawk of the week, I pick Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas had a monster game. He was flying around all over the place. One of the things he likes to say is he gets into dragon time mode, which I don't know if you've ever heard Earl Thomas talk, but he is a crazy dude. Like, I don't know what's going on up there, but it's a party. And when he says he gets into dragon time, more power to you, Earl. You get into dragon time and you run around and you get an interception. And at one point, he literally punched Devonta Freeman in the tackle. He was trying to punch the ball out and get a turnover for the Hawks, but he literally punched him. And I didn't know that was legal in the NFL, but go for it, Earl Thomas. Have a great game. Love Seahawk of the week, Earl Thomas. It was awesome. Keep doing more of that. There was some other stuff in that game, too, that was, not as much fun, like blown coverages and Richard Sherman. I don't want to say pouting, but he was very upset on the sideline, and they had to rally around him and jump up and down. And of course, there was the pass interference call that wasn't called at the end of the game. But I'm just going to set the record straight, and I'm going to do it in less than 30 seconds. One call does not define a game. Therefore, anybody who comes up to you as a Seahawk fan and says it was a cheap win or not a good win because they didn't call the thing, and this always happens for the Hawks. Well, let me tell you what. There were at least 3 pass interference calls that we didn't get as well. They were just that's the way they were officiating the game. So don't come up to me with your fourth quarter Hail Mary and say, oh, they didn't call pass interference. We're letting the people play. I don't want to see pass interference in that situation, even if I was on the other end of that call. Come on. This is the end of the game. You had your opportunity. Seahawks win. That might have been a little bit more than 30 seconds, but man, had to get that off my chest. We're talking nothing but football in this episode of Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest. We're in the heart of football season. Baseball's going right now in the postseason, but we're not in it. I might talk about the World Series when that happens, but this episode is football episode. So, my topic of the day, I'm going to talk about the NFC. Who are the contenders? Who are on the fringe? Who is, kind of outside? I'm not going to do every team in the NFC. There are some clear teams in the NFC that just aren't very good. I'm talking to you, Carolina. NFC champions. Blah. Come on, show your stuff. I'm going to start with some of the teams that are on the fringe. First one might be a little bit surprising, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. You'd think they'd be in the hunt for being a contender, being 5-1 with a rookie quarterback and a rookie running back and all that business. But who have they played? Who have they played? They haven't really played anybody that jumps off the page as a legit contender, a legit win. They've had some good divisional games. The one loss they had was a stupid loss against the Giants. So, what can you do there? And plus, Jerry Jones, being Jerry Jones, is going to make the stupidest decision in the history of the National Football League. Not the history, but a really bad decision when he puts Tony Romo back in over Dak Prescott. He's going to lose that locker room, and the entire locker room is going to turn against him, and it's all going to explode. That's at least what I think. That's why they're on the fringe and not a legit contender. Now, maybe that'll change later on in the year. The Cowboys, have proven that in the regular season they can sometimes play pretty well and then lose in the postseason. But, this isn't 1990. This isn't 1995. Troy Aikman's in the booth. So show me something, Cowboys, and you'll get into the contenders category. Another on-the-fringe team is the Philadelphia Eagles. Same division. Should be interesting to see which one of those two teams comes on top of the NFC East, or the NFC Least, as people call them, although I don't think they're the worst division in football right now. I'm looking at you, AFC South. But they're pretty good. Carson Wentz, and I've talked about him before on this podcast, is a really good football player. He can't do it himself. The defense was really, really good for the first part of the season. And, it's tapered off a little bit, so I'd like to see them get back up to that and string a few good games together against a legit team on the road and pull out a win. That's when you get into the contenders category of the NFC. Also on the fringe, we have the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are an interesting one because they are a perennial contender in the NFC. They seem to always make the postseason, at least recently, and they seem to always go, pretty deep and be a struggle, at least for the Seahawks to beat. And part of the reason why is they have historically the best quarterback in the NFL recently, and that is Aaron Rodgers. But there's some pretty startling statistics coming out of Green Bay, and with the play of Aaron Rodgers, I saw an interesting graph, and it doesn't mean anything, but right now his completion percentage in the last basically year's worth of games, end of last year and beginning of this year, is 58%, right around 58%, which is the same completion percentage that Johnny Manziel had last year. Now, we all know where Johnny Manziel is right now, and I'm not actually comparing Aaron Rodgers to Johnny Manziel. I just thought it was funny. But they need to figure that out in Green Bay. And I do not think that it is Aaron Rodgers' fault entirely. I think, has he lost a step? Is he dancing around in the pocket a little bit too much? Yeah, I think so. But, he can easily get back to form, I think, if his receivers can get open, basically. The receiving core for the Green Bay Packers has not been good. Jordy Nelson is coming off his ACL, and Aaron Rodgers always finds him for a touchdown, it seems, recently in games. But it hasn't been like a super clean touchdown where Jordy's open. It's been Aaron Rodgers throwing a lightning bolt past three defenders, and Jordy somehow catching it. And where's Randall Cobb? Randall Cobb scored a garbage time touchdown pass last week against the Cowboys, but where's Randall Cobb? He's supposed to be a dynamite slot receiver, and I haven't seen or heard much of him. Devontae Adams is always injured, and past that, who do you got? You got Ty Montgomery, what's his name? Quarles, something like that. I mean, get some good receivers, or have your old guard receivers remember how to get open, and that might help some. Also, the run game with Eddie Lacy is hit or miss, so it'll be interesting to see going forward how that progresses. I just saw a stat today or not a stat, but a notice today that he's going to be out for a few weeks, and they just traded for Nile Davis for the Kansas City Chiefs, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in that backfield. James Starks is injured, so I mean it's all hands on deck for the Green Bay Packers. It'll be interesting to see what goes on going forward. So those are my on the fringe. We've got the Packers, Eagles, and Cowboys. Those are my on the fringe NFC contenders, or not quite contenders, on the fringe of being contenders. Now in the contenders category, I think you guys might be able to guess at least one or two of these. I'm going to start with the Falcons, who the Seahawks just played. That's a good-looking offense. I mean, this is one of recently in the Seahawks history where the team scored more than 24 points and the Seahawks actually won. That hasn't happened recently just because we don't give up that many points and win that often. So it goes to show you the strength of the Falcons' offense. I mean, we held them down in the first half. I was feeling good, sitting pretty in the first half, up by 2 touchdowns, and then they come out and score 2 touchdowns on 2 consecutive series to blown coverages for one. But, I mean, Julio Jones is a monster. I was thinking he was a little overhyped coming in off his 300-yard game, and he's always been good, but he's had injury concerns, and is he really that good? Yes, he is. In that offense, where that offensive coordinator targets the number one receiver more than anything else, his plays are designed around Julio Jones. Yeah, Richard Sherman is the best cornerback in the league, and he couldn't even guard him on quite a few plays. The guy is a monster. They'll put him in the slot. They'll put him outside. They'll put him in motion. They'll throw it to him fast. They'll throw it to him down the field. He's fast. He's big. He has a tremendous catch radius, and he is the focal point of that offense. Matt Ryan loves throwing the ball to him. He loves catching the ball. That's why he puts up some of these ridiculous numbers. And let me tell you what, Julio Jones can get it done as a wide receiver. There aren't many in the league right now that I would consider better than Julio Jones. Combine that with the run game that they couldn't really get going against us because we're so good against the run. But you've got Devonta Freeman, you've got Tevin Coleman, and they're a wombo combo 1-2 punch there in the backfield that's just absolutely just pounding people. And I mean, their offensive line isn't bad. We were hitting Matt Ryan a lot, but that was just based purely on a lot of our pass rushing skill. And I think it would have been a little bit different game if Cam Chancellor had been in the game, calling the plays. There might not have been as many touchdowns or points scored by the Falcons, but they've got one high-powered offense and a defense and a defensive-minded head coach in Dan Quinn that knows how to get it done. And, he came in with an intimate knowledge of our defensive guys and our defense, which could have helped him in the offensive scheme. But, I mean, that's an offense, still the number one offense in the NFL that is going to give some people some problems down the stretch. I'm glad we got to play him at home. I do not want to see him again in the playoffs, but they are definitely a contender in the NFC, and that is absolutely a possibility. Of course, this is the same Falcons team, well, with a few different pieces, that last year started the season 6-0 and then lost a bunch straight and missed the playoffs. So we may see a monumental meltdown like that, but I don't think so. Falcons are definitely a contender in the NFC. 2, my second contender in the NFC, and there's 3 of them, are the Minnesota Vikings, the undefeated Minnesota Vikings. They are good. And it's really a story of overcoming pretty much all of the adversity you possibly can in a season and win now mode like their franchise is. And I've been really impressed by what their general manager and what Mike Zimmer, the head coach, has done to hold that team together through all the injuries. And it helps to have a phenomenal defense, just an absolutely exceptional defense with speed at every position, which is really hard to find in the NFL. I mean, you lose your franchise passer in a practice before the season starts, and he is out. He's out for the season. He may not even be ready for next season when it comes around, which is crazy. Like a catastrophic injury to your franchise passer, and you don't got anybody behind him, really. You've got Sean Hill, who's been in the league for eternity and drives a Fred Flintstone car to work. So it's not your future sitting behind Teddy Bridgewater. You lose Adrian Peterson, the best running back in the NFL for the last 8 years. It's crazy, the adversity they've come against. They've lost now 2 offensive linemen, I think, for the year. And in the NFL, having continuity on your offensive line is all too important. As we as Seahawks fans know, they have just overcome all of these things, and they're undefeated. And it's not like they didn't play anybody. They played the Green Bay Packers at home. I mean, there's a lot of Green Bay Packers in their new building, their giant glass ship of US Bank Stadium that is actually really cool. They got the big Galga horn or whatever they call it up in the rafters, and their fans are doing the skull chants and clapping, and it's a really cool atmosphere to see. I'd love to go there someday and just see it. I flew over it this summer when I was going to Wrigley Field to watch the Mariners play, and it looks cool from the air. So, but that was it's an interesting place, and they are a really good team. And the Seahawks don't play them. They don't play them this year in the regular season, which I'm not incredibly unhappy about. He escaped them, barely escaped them. A younger team, so they have playoff experience. Last year in the divisional round when Blair Walsh shanked a kick. That's really the weakness that I see in their team is Blair Walsh is he doesn't have ice in his veins, I can tell you that. I mean, it's not a physical lack of kicking. He's got one of the best legs in the league, but I think he just chokes. I think that kick got in his head somehow, and I mean, and he's always been like this since he started. He has never been a mega accurate kicker. He's just there for his leg strength alone. And it'd be interesting to see if they end up calling on him in a clutch situation again, like you often find yourself in these close, playoff, close, very important games in the NFL, and you need a good kicker. So that's really the weakness that I see. Sam Bradford is, he's hit or miss some days. They don't really have much in terms of great receivers behind Stephon Diggs, who's been oft injured too. I mean, their first-round pick, Laquan Treadwell, hasn't really shown anything this year at all. I don't even know if he's caught a ball. And it'll be interesting to see how long they can really trust their defense and special teams to get them through, because that's what's winning them games. Defense and special teams. They've got a really young, really fast defense that reminds me a lot of the Seahawks defense. And they've got an offense that doesn't give away the game like a lot of offenses will, like the Jets offense. So it'll be interesting to see going forward. They are definitely number one in the NFC right now because they're undefeated. Until you lose, you're number one. They're coming off a bye week to play the Eagles. I expect them to beat the Eagles, even in Philadelphia. So it'll be interesting to see. And I've said that like 6 times. It'll be interesting to see going forward what the Minnesota Vikings can do. But they are definitely a contender and the class of the NFC right now. Finally, and I think you guys saw this one coming, contender in the NFC, the Seattle Seahawks. Absolutely, we are in great position. If you think about where we were last year, when we could not win a game in the fourth quarter to save our life, it was always about losing games in the fourth quarter for these guys. It just shook me to my core. It was the worst. Of course, we pull it out. We go to the playoffs. We win the most exciting game in Minnesota, lose in heartbreaking fashion to Carolina. But, I mean, you can't go to the Super Bowl every year. It's hard to get there. And if there are new Seahawks fans listening, that's something to take away from that last season is it's hard to get to the Super Bowl. It's not like Super Bowl every year. We've been to 3 since 1976. They just happen to be recently, a couple of them. So there's a lot of great pieces to our team. And I definitely think we have Super Bowl potential this year. I definitely think as far as a ceiling, we have the highest potential in the NFC. Just because we've got an offense with so many weapons and an offensive line that should only get better with time, as Tom Cable has proven time and time again to be able to do. An unhealthy Russell Wilson right now who will get healthier and will become more of that dynamic dual threat weapon that he is, even though watching him as just a pure pocket passer is just fun. Because people are always saying, oh, Russell Wilson's not a pure pocket passer, for whatever Scottish football fans there are. And he is. He absolutely is not purist, but a great pocket passer, really one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. And we've got a defense that has all these major cogs in it. If they can stay healthy with a lot of young pieces to keep it fresh and keep it really, scary. And that's what our defense is. It's scary. I wouldn't want to play a team with our defense. We've got the best cornerback in the NFL. We've got the best free safety in the NFL. We've got the best strong safety in the NFL when he's on the field. We've got one of the best defensive ends in Michael Bennett, who should be good to go for next game, hopefully. Stupid chop block. That's the worst rule in the NFL. Get those out of here. Dirty, gross. Anyways, we've got Bobby Wagner, who is arguably one of the best middle linebackers in the NFL. We've got KJ Wright. We've got Deshaun Shedd. We've got Frank Clark, who's a young guy coming up. Cliff Averill, who's a monster. I mean, we've got all of these pieces. Jerron Reed, who's a rookie that's going to be really productive and has shown that he's productive against the run. Our defense is just tight-knit. It's close. It's impenetrable against the run. And a nightmare against the pass. I mean, what else could you want from an NFL defense? Show me an NFL defense with all of those pieces. I mean, Minnesota Vikings are obviously close. Denver Broncos have a lot of those great pieces with the best pure pass rusher in the NFL. But, I mean, as close as these guys have been, as long as they've been together, John Schneider and Pete Carroll made a decision to build that defense around its core, and it's only gotten better and, more synchronized over time. And that becomes apparent when you see things like blown coverages last week when Cam Chancellor, who is calling a lot of those plays for the secondary, isn't in the game. You see that. You see where coverages can get blown and where the advantage of having those guys who can basically talk to each other without saying anything together every game. That's a lot of weapons. And we've got just as many, we've got some of the same kind of weapons on offense. Tyler Lockett, fast. Doug Baldwin, I love Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin's awesome. Jimmy Graham, oh my gosh. I can't say enough about Jimmy Graham. There's just so many great pieces to the Seahawks right now. A really great unit. We are absolutely at the highest ceiling in the NFC. We have the power to control the NFC. I think 14 wins is home field advantage this year. 14, not 13. 14 wins. That means we can either lose at Foxborough or at Green Bay. Not both. So pick one. We're going, baby. Seahawks, I think, can absolutely get it done and be the winners in the NFC and really run the table going into the playoffs. So that was my topic of the week. Class in the NFC up for you guys. If you guys have questions or comments, you can always tweet me at NeutralZoneNW or send them to NeutralZoneInfractionNW@gmail.com. I'm happy to read them. I'm happy to read them, in the podcast, answer your questions on the podcast. You got a question about football, baseball, women's curling, tennis, I'll find the answer. And you know what? If it's not the right answer, it'll be funny. So, hit me up with your questions. It'll be a lot of fun. So now I'm going to get into the part of the podcast, which is my favorite, and that's where I pick games that haven't happened yet. And I'm going to jump right in here. Okay, so I went 9-6 this last week, which is, pretty respectable. Not awful. It was looking pretty bad on Sunday morning when almost all my picks were going bad, but it evened out, straightened out, ended up being a pretty good week. 45-31 lifetime. So, I'm right more than I'm wrong, which can be said for a lot of people, but specifically for me. Here we go, getting right into these picks. We've got Thursday Night Football, Bears at Packers. This is a fun divisional game, but after the Bears lose to the Jaguars at home, in the fourth quarter, they completely lost the game and fell apart in the fourth quarter. I don't see them waltzing into Lambeau Field and getting a win. They're not the Dallas Cowboys, who did just that last week. And, I think the Packers will turn it around. They rarely lose 2 in a row, especially at home. My goodness. And I see them cleaning up in the division. So I'm going with Packers at home. Next game. This game's in London. Giants at Rams. So I'm going to pause and give you a thought here. A home game for the Los Angeles Rams in London? A home game. So you just fly your pretty butts 4,000, 5,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, across the entire continental United States, then across the Atlantic Ocean, and have a nice home game in London. If the NFL ever does this to the Seahawks and calls it a home game in London, I am going to knock down the door of Roger Goodell's office and say, no, not a home game. You don't take away one of my home games to make my team fly the farthest it possibly can to play football. That is disgusting. Anyways, but Rams, they're a brand new franchise, just young, bright-eyed in the NFL in their new home of Los Angeles. Have fun on that plane ride. Anyways, Giants at Rams. Just based on that flight alone, and to say it's not a factor is insane, because it is absolutely a factor. West Coast teams in general in London is dumb. It's completely dumb. I'm going with the Giants here. Number one, because they're a better team. Number two, because the Rams have to fly a bajillion T miles to go to their home game. Okay, Sunday morning, we've got Saints at Chiefs. Saints have a really good offense and a really awful defense. I mean, you can say that about the Saints for the last years and years and years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the Chiefs have a really great defense. They've got a pretty nice home field advantage. And they beat up the Raiders last week. So I'm picking Chiefs here at home. All right, we've got Vikings at Eagles in Philadelphia. That'll be a fun game to watch. For sure. We got Carson Wentz facing a pretty tough test in that Vikings defense coming in. It'll be interesting to see how many, if any, picks he throws. But he's really good. I don't know if he was a Vikings fan growing up. He probably was growing up in North Dakota. So it'll probably be fun for him. But the Vikings are coming off their bye, and they're a better team. So I'm going Vikings at Eagles. All right, we've got Colts at Titans. I don't know what to make of the Colts. I mean, you can have a fourth quarter meltdown on Monday Night Football and really prove that Andrew Luck can't do it all, and he's not exactly the best quarterback in the NFL right now, even though his name is Andrew Luck. And the Titans are looking pretty good. So I'm going with Titans at home. Divisional game, should be a lot of fun, but Titans at home over the Colts. Next game, Bills at Dolphins. The Bills keep rolling, and they keep rolling right on the back of LaShawn McCoy, who is the second leading rusher in the NFL right now. Shady's getting it done, 3 touchdowns last week. I picked him up for my fantasy team on a sweet trade, and I've just been riding that horse to the bank, even though I lost in a technicality last week. Anyway, fantasy football. You win some, you lose some. But Bills, I like what they're doing. I like the win streak they're on. Dolphins, picked up a good win against the Steelers that might give them some confidence. So I'm expecting a close game, a really kind of slugfest of a game, ground and pound them. But I expect the Bills to win because I don't think that the Dolphins have an answer for LaShawn McCoy. Next game, we've got Redskins at Lions. The Lions, Matt Stafford is looking really good this year, which is kind of surprising without Megatron. I talked about that briefly in a previous episode, where it might be actually be helping him that he doesn't have a safety blanket. But the Redskins look good sometimes and not so great the other times. It's not exactly the red alert it was at the beginning of the season with Kirk Cousins because he is getting some stuff done. But I don't think that they have enough to go into Detroit and win against the Lions, especially if they play like they did last week against the Rams. So I'm picking Lions at home. All right, Browns at Bengals. Bengals, next game. Raiders at Jaguars. This is a fun little matchup of but they're not my teams. Seahawks are my team, but I really like these two young teams and think they have a lot of potential. A couple of good young quarterbacks, a lot of good pieces around them, especially in the defense. But I like the Jaguars here at home. Reason being is I think that, it's going to be it's a travel situation, which really has an effect. I'm going to have to do a segment on that about travel in the NFL and in sports in general and how the West Coast teams are at an inherent disadvantage. But I'm going to go with the Jaguars here at home. I like them to beat the Raiders, especially coming off of what the Raiders offense did last week, which was not much. And the Jaguars getting a good pick-me-up win in Chicago. So, Jaguars at home. Ravens at Jets. The Jets put in Geno Smith on Monday night. That's a sign of desperation. This guy and Ryan Fitzpatrick that you were trying so hard throughout the offseason to get for a decent price, and he finally signs for $17 million or something for 1 year, and he throws a bajillion interceptions and fumbles the ball all the time. And his one redeeming quality is he looks like a Civil War general with his beard, which is awesome. But other than that, he's a guy that will lose you the game based off turnovers alone. So I don't like him. And Geno Smith isn't good. He wasn't good when he was drafted. He was drafted way too high in a desperation move by Rex Ryan. So, no. Ravens at Jets. Next game, we got Chargers at Falcons. The Chargers pulled off a good win against Denver. They always play Denver tough. That was a tough one to call, and I was just on the wrong end of it. But the Chargers, they can play really well, but I don't think that they go into Atlanta against the best offense in the NFL and win, especially not with their defense and their entire team losing as many pieces as they have. I'm going with Falcons, Chargers at Falcons, picking the Falcons to win. Next game, Bucks at Niners. Colin Kaepernick did okay-ish in his first start. Chip Kelly's all saying that he saw good things from Colin Kaepernick, and there's a lot to build on. Well, is there? He's not exactly a young, spry quarterback anymore. I mean, he's still young, but he's not like a rookie. So can he learn? Can he overcome those things that he's been known for, which is not having great accuracy? I don't think so necessarily. I'm definitely going with the Bucks at the 49ers. All right, next game. We have got Pats at Steelers. Big Ben had surgery on his knee, so he's not going to be in it. This would be a really, really fun game to watch if Big Ben were playing. But as it is right now, I think the Pats come in and eviscerate the Steelers because I don't think the offense has the same punch. I mean, Antonio Brown is basically Antonio Brown, and the factory is because of the rapport that he has with Big Ben. Big Ben will throw him the ball 10 times a game. Without that, I mean, you're obviously going to get targets as one of the best wideouts in the NFL, but it's not going to be the same without Big Ben, who is one of the elite passers in the NFL. And like I said before, Tom Brady's not rusty. That team's coming in and I think they make a statement against the Steelers without Big Ben. It won't be as big of a statement as they could have made if he was in the game, but I think the Pats over the Steelers at home. Sunday Night Football, Hawks at Cardinals. Woo! That's going to be a fun one. Now, the Cardinals suck. They're not great, but their running back is one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, and they're always going to play the Seahawks tough because they hate us. They hate us. We don't like them very much, but they hate us because we've been beating them, except for last year when they beat us because they hate us. So it'll be interesting going into Arizona. I don't think it will be that it'll be a close game, but it won't be that close. Definitely the Hawks are going to win for sure. I think Carson Palmer is he's out of gas. What does he have? I think he throws 2, maybe 3 picks in Sunday night. I think David Johnson meets his match in our run defense, and we come away with a win. I think maybe we win by a touchdown. But should be a good game on Sunday night. All right, Monday Night Football, last game of the week, Texans at Broncos. This will be it's a fun story because Brock Osweiler obviously left the Broncos this last offseason after a Super Bowl win because they didn't offer him the money that he wanted, and the Texans did. And, that's probably a pretty smart move by John Elway to not offer him that money because I don't know if he's worth it. He's a big, tall drink of water, and he can throw it pretty well sometimes, but I don't think he's the franchise passer, which is what the Texans are paying him like. Now, that being said, I like the Texans. As I've said before, I like what Bill O'Brien does with the Texans. But the Broncos are coming off a bye, or not a bye, but long rest because they played Thursday Night Football. And the Broncos are at home, and that defense quotes now from Brandon Marshall, their linebacker, "We want to kill Brock Osweiler." That's not great for Brock Osweiler going against one of the best pass rushing defenses in the NFL. So buckle your bootstraps, son, because the pain train is coming in the form of Von Miller. Have a great time. Definitely Broncos at home. So that's my show for this week. This has been Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest. Remember, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. I've been putting it up earlier on YouTube than I did on Facebook, so subscribe to YouTube. Maybe you'll get the episode a little bit earlier than if you wait for my Facebook or tweet post. Social media snapshot there. Send your comments, feedback, questions to @NeutralZoneNorthwest on Twitter and NeutralZoneInfractionNorthwest@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week. Have a good one.